we're here to talk. What are we talking about? Oh, bring your concept art to.
Just concept art.
Concept art. Like that.
How to go through your concept art.
Or any questions.
Or any questions.
Yeah, questions are always good.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll let these people introduce themselves. John, go ahead.
Hi, I'm John Bridges. I'm the lead concept artist for the game Smite for High Res Studios, where we essentially pit gods against each other on a battlefield and then create all kinds of crazy skins for those gods so they look different every time you play them.
And what did you do before that?
Before that, I was at CCP working on a game called World of Darkness, which alas will never see the light of day.
That's sad.
And before that, I've worked for various freelance clients and holistic design. I worked there for a long time on a game called Fading Suns.
Pretty good. And sir?
Well, I'm just an old artist. I was here at the beginning of games, just about. I did, I guess my most recognizable painting I've ever done was the basic D&D cover for the second edition. The red box is what people refer to. And I did the blue box and the green box. And I was also, I guess you might say, art director for Dragonlance, the novels. I did a whole bunch of covers. I know I did the first 11, I know. And so my whole career, well, I worked at TSR for like 7 or 8 years. I went freelance in '88. I've never run out of work since. I've done, before the computer games came in, I done toy packaging, Thundercats. I done toys for Willow. I did model car boxes, Princess of Power sticker fun books. I've done about everything think of, you know. At that time, you know, you got a wife and 2 kids, and you're freelancing, so you take it all on. And I did a lot of paperback book covers and games, continued doing games. I done Shadowrun, the original cover. I don't know, I did, I've just done a lot. But I work traditionally. I work with, I mean, I can appreciate the beauty and the speed of computer art. I'm not one of these guys that's got a jihad against it. I know a few artists that have. But it's like, when computer art was coming in, I knew it was coming, and I had a choice of going that way or the other way, but I thought, I'm old enough. I think I can float on through doing traditional art. And I also had this idea which really worked. I thought, you know, it's been like 30-some years, and all these kids played D&D were like 14 and 15 years old. And I'd run into quite a few of them. I'm at different places like in Hollywood, and they're working in the movie industry, and doctors, lawyers, everything, you know. Test pilots, they played D&D. And a lot of them making a lot of money, so I thought, you know, I've been in some people's houses that's got a lot of money, and their paintings or the art on their walls was always originals. I thought, you know, this group, fantasy, is becoming mature. And I thought, I'm going to stick to oils and try to get right and paint my own stuff. And sure enough, it worked. And I'm getting more money for my own paintings now than about any job I ever did. So it took a while to get there, but I'm really, I'm so happy. I'm afraid. You know, when things go too good, you start getting a little worried. That's where I'm at. It's like, you know, it finally worked out, and I'm 69, but I feel as good as I ever did, and I'd rather paint than eat. I mean, some people say, when are you going to retire? Like, you know, when I die.
Well, here comes the trick question. John, what mediums do you use?
Everything.
Fortunately, in my job, we're pretty much forced to do digital,
Yeah, I can
just
understand.
because of the pipeline needs at the studio and the constant editing and revision.
But there's no mess either.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no sloppy mess to clean up, no
Probably
that
so.
eraser stuff to brush away.
Yeah, probably Cobalt Driver's going to kill me. But
All those fixatives and.
yeah, everything.
Have you worked with different mediums though?
I actually started traditional.
Okay.
I'm old enough to have, started doing illustration that way, but made the transition.
Use a pencil.
along the way. Yes,
Yeah.
pencil and pen, and painted a lot of illustrations with like gouache and a little bit of oil.
Yeah.
I actually studied oil painting in college, but didn't take it much further than that. But yeah, pretty much made the hop to digital. What really worked for me was when the Cintiq monitors came along, where you actually draw on the monitor, because I had already made those neural pathways for drawing
Right.
like normal, and I can never really adapt to drawing on the tablet. Where you're doing here and looking at the monitor there.
It's kind of like a
Paint
display.
that way. but
I
couldn't
tried
draw
that
way.
once back in the, I guess, 2000 something, early 90s, maybe late 90s. And so I got this inside. Here's my first step. I'm drawing digitally. And I'm like,
Yeah,
it's like, holy cow. It's like, what the heck with this?
Yeah.
I sort of basically threw it in a box and that was it.
Yeah, I think if they'd never come up with Cintiq monitors, I'd
Yeah.
still be doing the traditional.
What was the first drawing that you vividly remember that you were proud of?
Probably back in elementary school.
That you were proud of. You
Yes.
look back and go, I did that.
Yeah, well, it was actually part of a presentation thing where I got to draw Snoopy fighting the Red Baron, and everybody made a
The
big
Red
fuss
Baron.
over it.
Yeah,
So that
that's
was
cool.
like, I can do this.
And yours?
My first one was never finished. I was 3 years old.
You remember that?
Yes.
I can't remember last night, but okay.
I had a pencil, and there was a kitchen wall, the perfect place to draw on. So I was going to draw a car, and I drew. The reason I remember it looked like I drew two perfect circles for the wheels. Now in reality, they might have been like, but in my mind, they were like perfectly round wheels. I'm like, wow, these are the best wheels I've ever drawn. So I was drawing to connect the two, just on the body, and Mom caught me. And I think I got a spanking for that. I never drew on the walls again. But she washed it all off, and I'm just like, it wasn't about anything. It was like, those were two perfect circles.
Everyone's a critic.
Those parents of yours,
I know.
what were some of your inspirations for getting into art?
Well, comics and D&D, really. Comic books were probably my biggest early influence. And I started playing D&D pretty early on, back when Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first came out. And did a lot of role-playing games and that's pretty much where I started, was doing pen and paper illustrations professionally. I started doing stuff for some of the game magazines and for White Wolf Studios when they started out. And just took it from there.
Well, I mean, is there any specific, if you had to pick a piece of art that inspired you to go forward with your career, it's like, this is something I want to do with the rest of my life, it would be what?
Well, there was a book I encountered in high school that really set my mind on fire called The Studio. It was a book that showed four artists who made their names in comics.
Kaluta.
Kaluta, Wrightson,
Wrightson,
Jeffrey Jones, and Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah.
And
I bought that too when
yeah,
it came out.
That was an amazing book, and
You're
it was them
older than I
essentially.
thought you.
Yeah, I'm an old guy. And they left comics to kind of do their own sort of fine art and prints and things. And this book kind of chronicled the year they spent sharing a studio and the work that came out of that. And that was just a huge influence on me.
Yeah, big impact.
Well, Larry, what, if you had to pick a piece of work or a book or even a statue or a building that inspired you, like, you know what, I'm 3 and my mother erases the drawings on the kitchen wall, what would it be?
Well, you probably started drawing at a really young age and didn't stop, all right? All right. I'm from grew up in rural Kentucky. I still live in the same county. I moved back there and built a house. But we're talking about like 1953 or something. So my first grade, I go to a one-room country school. All right, so in a one-room country school, they teach the first graders in the morning for like 30 minutes, and the teacher has to work her way through all eight classes and come back to the first graders again. This is the first time I ever had an actual tablet of my own and a pencil.
Well, you have to define tablet.
Well, just that old paper. Oh, yeah. When I talk about tablets, it's always paper. With the blue lines to it, the big, the big old brown pad, like beige pad with blue lines across, about that far apart. Anyway, so I had all day to sit there, and in those kind of schools back then, you didn't make a sound. No one spoke except the teacher. I don't care if you were hyper or what. You sit there and you didn't say a word. But I liked it because I had all day to draw. And I was sort of private. Nobody's going to bother you. So I started drawing women. I was 6 years old. I was drawing naked women. And so the teacher, in the afternoon one day, it's like 2 weeks into school, she said, all right, everybody get a piece of paper out to do this. So my tablet was full. I said, I don't have any paper. She's like, well, you should. And this was a big, mean woman. I mean, she was about 6 foot tall. And I'd seen her whip one of the 8th graders with a pole, about beating to death. I was scared to death, this woman. You could do that back then. You know? And it wasn't called abuse. It was just teaching. And so I said, I didn't have a piece of paper. She went over and grabbed my tablet, and she starts flipping through it like, oh, my God. I was drawing obviously good enough to tell what was going on. And so she wrote a note and sent home to my parents. I thought it was like Larry's such a good student. So I give it to them. I remember them sitting at the kitchen table really worried and discussing things. So my dad took me to school the next day. Never forget, he stood behind the teacher at her desk. And everybody, the whole little school everybody was in their desk. And they was going through my tablet. And once in a while they'd stop at a certain drawing and they'd both sort of look at me. Then they'll go back. And so I started being rationed paper from that point on in school. I didn't draw another girl till I was 9 years old. I just, oh God, there's something. I just can't draw that beauty of women then. But I was drawing everything. But I think mine came from a world of adventure. When I quit drawing the girls for a while, all the men at that time, when they get together and talk, they would talk about World War II. They was all freshly out of World War II. And I just thought that was the most exciting thing in the world. I heard all these stories, so I started drawing World War II stuff and fighting and killing and blood spattered soldiers. And then the old fighter planes coming in and shooting machine gun stuff. And then my parents thought I was a little bit sick this way, and they got worried. So I started drawing race cars, man, just and crashes and guys flaming. But it was adventure, and so I'd seen a painting of a Viking longship. Didn't know what it was. My dad explained to me what it was. Vikings. Oh God, these are like the ultimate adventure guys, you know. So when I was 10, 11 years old, I was drawing Viking longship. Didn't know what a Viking looked like, but I draw the ships, you know. And so when I finally got to college, you know, I didn't know anything about fine art. I was just drawing, I guess, fantasy. It didn't really have a name. And the teacher's like, what is this crap you're doing, you know? And so about my second year of college, it was in 67, somewhere around there, the first Conan book with Frazetta's cover came out. And that blew me away. That's like, that's it, but some dude is doing it already. But I was pretty young, and my stuff looked like crap compared to his. And it's like, but it really just tore me up, but it made me exciting. It's like, that was the first piece of real fantasy. And I'd seen, like, Treasure Island, N.C. Weiss paintings of that, and I loved those. Again, it was adventure. So I think my approach to fantasy was adventure and excitement. And that was basically it. But there was nothing to justify painting that. But so once I saw Frazetta's work, somebody said fantasy type stuff. Fantasy art, that's it. Because there's no rules. There's no limit. It's fantasy art. And so that's it. That's what I want to be.
Okay, so we've got a little bit of your background. So we were basically talking about how to take your concept work to real production. And I was like, okay, that was your little warm-up. So how do you approach a piece of concept work? So client or boss or peon comes up to you and tells you he wants you to draw something, what's the first thing you do besides say, do you know what I charge, right? And I don't work for free. Which should be the first 2 words out of your mouth. I don't work for free.
Well, most of the actual concept work I've done has always been in a studio environment, where you're not getting paid per concept. You're getting paid to be there and just draw whatever comes at you. In the case of Smite, we have a game that's based around mythological gods that already have a lore around them. And so what we tend to do is go and look at that god and see how he or she or it has been depicted throughout history in different ways, and then start to hone down from there to give it our kind of Smite look. There's been kind of a look and feel that's been developed for how the characters get handled in the game. And sometimes it's not always your instincts. You gotta fit with what the art director and the design crew and all that want. So a lot of it's just a matter of a lot of iteration, just throwing a lot of ideas out and honing down to get something that everybody's happy with.
I think if I'd born a little later, been younger, I love the concept stuff and design stuff.
Yeah, it's fun because you don't have to worry about taking it to finish and polish, and it's
and
just
you
can just
let
throw
your
out the
brain
ideas.
go and just come up with ideas. Now, I also worked in a studio environment, like I say, I worked at TSR. And then after that, I worked in 2 environments, but the first one wasn't very creative. My second job as an illustrator at TSR, I did like that roughing something out, or where I got to do more of that was when we was creating Dragonlance. Mm-hmm. And I found out I loved working in a team creating something. And but in those days there wasn't much of that going on, because you did a painting for a cover of something, and it's just you. And so sometimes there were some times to design and experiment and play with it and try to make it better. Most of the time, as a freelance illustrator during my life, it was like, you've got about 2.5 weeks to deadline. You got to get a finished oil painting from concept to done. And so I would take maybe 2 or 3 days drawing. I'd have to find a scene or something in a book that might be appropriate cover. Do my little research about that, and believe it or not, you'll go through the whole books, and the main character was never described, and that would tear me up. What color hair did he? Anything? Nothing. And
sometimes it can be freeing. I noticed that.
I know
I don't know if anyone's read Isaac Asimov, but there are no descriptions whatsoever in his work. He is the least visual author I think I've ever encountered. But in that sense, you have utter freedom as to how you're going to envision.
It can be good or bad. Usually I figured it was going to be bad. But you had to do your concepts, and I would label them A, B, and C. I have them 3 versions. Well, I found out after a couple of years that never put what you want to do as an A. I would usually put it as B or C, because it seemed like they never picked A, So I guess they figured, well, this was his first idea, and by this time it should be better. I don't know what their mindset was, but I would do a sketch, and when I really liked the most, I put an A or number 1, and there's 2 others. And they would always pick one of the 2 others. Or let's combine A and C. Okay. And but I just didn't have the time. It was like, do the drawings, they approve a sketch, and once they combine A and or B and C or something, I wouldn't send them another one. I would just go to it and then send them a painting. And it just wasn't time.
So the people you deal with, the people who want the end finished product, do you secretly think they don't know what they're asking for?
It happens sometimes, yeah.
How often?
There have been times when I've been on projects where there's just a lot of rinse, wash, repeat cycle for things, and they don't know what they're looking for. It's more of I'll know it when I see it, which can be really frustrating.
Yeah. I have those clients too.
Yeah.
And it's like, just build this for me, and if the app works, I'll pay you for it. No, it doesn't work like that. It works the other way around. Tell me what you want first.
Yeah, I'd much prefer to have somebody has an idea of what they want. Right now, I'm lucky to work with some people that do know that, especially an art director who can come in and immediately hone in on what he likes and what he doesn't like about something and communicate that. And it also helps when you're in a tight pipeline with a lot of turnaround, because they don't then have the luxury to hem and haw and so forth either. So they're forced to make decisions in a way that they might normally have to. And it helps things move along.
So you don't have to, hopefully, not the rinse cycle again.
Yeah.
And you have clients that don't know what they want?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes you think you're just an extension of, they want you to be an extension of their brain. They can't draw, but you got to read my mind and draw what I'm thinking. Like, well, what the hell are you thinking? Yeah, it gets rough.
I've seen it really cause morale in the studio to plunge, and see people leave over it when they just get to a point where they can't deal with it anymore. And so it can hurt a studio if you have people that are too much like that.
Yeah.
So you would recommend working for a company that has a good art direction, not just a person who
If you can, I'd
wants
say
to
sure.
extend their brain?
You don't always get that choice, but yeah.
Since you guys create such vivid iconography and objects that a lot of us as non-artists can't create, is it actually really hard to find jobs?
It's a mixed bag. I mean, it really depends on, it is often finding the right fit for what you do particularly.
Because I always hear the story about, most people, about the starving artist. I'm like, I desperately need artists, and I got to pay them to build what's in my head.
Right. I think things are pretty good right now. I think there have been periods, especially when I've been freelancing, where things have been, a little bit raw at times.
I'll
It
tell
all
you,
just depends on the market and who's out there and who's looking. Video games is a great thing for artists because it does give a chance to have a full-time in-studio job.
Right.
Rather than just freelancing, whereas publishing was almost all freelancing work.
if you want to look at, say, if you want to be a freelance illustrator, go back before Dungeons and Dragons. Okay? The only options were basically just magazines and some paperbacks. And usually in the paperback industry, they were sold up. They would have certain artists, like some of the Western art was popular back before fantasy, kind of Western books. There was like 3 or 4 artists that did them all, you know. And it was hard for artists to get a job. A lot of magazines, you know, they had all kinds of magazines. We don't have as many today like they used to. But all ads were usually art. Well, they disappeared. Well, when photography got better, I think then it'd be, you know, more film photography. This is before Photoshop and stuff. Yet there wasn't a lot of jobs for an artist. It was hard, and then here I decided to do this fantasy art, which nobody even knew what the hell it was, and there was no outlet for it much. But but there was something growing, and society was leaning in this direction. Heavy metal came out, and actually National Lampoon magazine back in the old days, it would do some fantasy-like stuff where Frazetta had a cover and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, you know. And there was just hardly any work. And then Dungeons and Dragons came along. Well, my God, you could do black and whites and tears. It was just, and then other companies, of course, the competition. So more and more for young artists, and then fantasy began to explode.
Fading Suns, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then along comes computer games, and they needed tons of stuff. And so this is a great time actually for artists.
Yeah, I think it helps that right now there's a big, I guess, boom in imaginary worlds across the board. Movies, TV,
Everything.
animation, and that requires somebody to visualize it to make it up. Whereas opposed to if you're just all doing, you know, realistic, naturalistic stories, you don't need much art help in that. So there's a lot of opportunities for people who can just make stuff up and make it look good on paper or pen or tablet or whatever.
But John, you mentioned how you said you do some kind of research to get a drawing. How important is it that people have reference drawings to create something, even though the object doesn't exist? Like if you're doing a sci-fi spaceship or even a futuristic gun or something back in medieval times where the concept or whatever you're trying to do, I don't know, a tri-catapult or something of that nature, that doesn't exist, how much time do you probably devote to looking and say, hey, how does this really look? Or how should this really look? It's almost like you're an engineer.
Even if we're doing something
Like a
that's
sword.
completely new and different, we'll gather reference images for a look and feel, just to kind of inspire us, to help develop an idea of what we want the form language and the shapes and such to be and what we're aiming for. And those can be images of something totally unrelated to the actual literal thing that you're doing, but they for whatever reason,
Yes,
color or shapes
imagination,
or whatever, can help contribute to that idea. Especially when it comes to stuff like technology and stuff like that. You want to make that look kind of fresh.
I think it's even like, she's doing a futuristic crossbow. Certain things, the way the item is used, what it's designed for, is going to dictate a basic design. Look at the past, see what's been done. Well, let's take a car, a futuristic car. Well, a car is for transportation. It can have wheels, or it cannot have wheels. And but you look at that, it's a relatable design for humans to relate to. So when you look at it, you know what it is, but you got to make it totally different. And that's fun, though. It's fun to do stuff like that. If you come up with a good design, ooh, that is so cool.
Has there been any kind of design that you've created, like the future crossbow or something like that?
Future crossbows. Crossbows
It's called computer layer.
It's so
It's actually on a tablet. It's a tablet.
not a tablet. There's no paper
They're
there.
the blue lines.
Have you been, like, you drew something, you're like, I'm so proud of this, I don't think I want to show it to anybody.
You saved ideas. I have.
There have been times, I'll do stuff in my sketchbook or whatever that I'll put aside. Like, hey,
It's like, I don't even want to mention this to anybody, but
Yeah.
it was the coolest thing I've ever done, and at some point when I feel comfortable, I will show it to people.
Yeah, or just an idea to file away for later that might work
Yeah.
in something that's not in front of you at the moment, but might come along later. That happens, sure.
I've had whole concepts for paintings,
Yeah.
and I didn't paint them. I put them away. It's like, I don't want it now. I don't want to use it for this book or something, and a lot of them I forgot. But some of them I found the notes, like, oh yeah, that was a good idea. But yeah, I was lots of times I wouldn't paint things because I want to save them.
When you do work for a lot of these, who in here is an artist? I'm sorry, let me change that. Who's not an artist? Yay, thank you. There's 2.5 people. Okay, so I bring this up because sometimes you guys have great ideas and you don't want to share them with people, and then you have a client who's going to provide you something, and it's like, do I want to give them this information, or I'm going to hold this back because I don't trust this? So it's like, you can do better, you know exactly what they want, but how they're saying it, it's like, oh man, I don't know if I really want to give them this idea that's been manifesting in myself for a long time, whether it's been decades or what have you. And it's like, should I present this to them as a different argument based upon what they're asking for you? Because you can see where they're going, but their direction they're giving you is completely, it's like, no, these you don't know what you're talking about. Let me show you this, and you kind of push that object kind of forwards, or you just say, no, it's not worth it, I'm going to keep it myself.
I think any creative person, artist, musician, writer, sculptor, whatever, programmer. Yes, same thing. I knew some of that was you're the same way. But you have concepts and ideas that you don't want to waste or give away. And maybe you don't have time to do it now, and you might have time to do it for the next 15 years, but it's there, and you know it's too good. I gave away a good idea one time, a really good idea for a book. And I wrote a rough outline of the whole thing, and I'm a storyteller too. And the book, when it was published, I hated it. I read the first one, it come out in three years, and I didn't read it anymore. I just read it, and it's like, they took a fantastic idea and just trivialized it. And I thought, I'm not going to give away any more friggin' ideas, and maybe I'd never written a book, better to have it, in my mind, the way I saw it, than to have it done wrong.
Right.
And so,
I think even just a career strategy-wise, you're seeing in some areas like the comics industry, people are much more aware of how creators in the past essentially just gave away their best ideas to the big
Right.
companies and don't own it, and then it goes off and makes $1 billion in a movie. And so they're thinking more and more, well, when I have a good idea, I will keep it to myself and publish it myself instead of, giving it to the big guys and letting them run away with it and make all the money.
so many times a career person gets screwed.
Yep.
Because they have our brain works on a different level, the creative side. And then someone coming along that's a manipulator, financial business person. Their brain's working at totally different level, totally different. They're sending money, and you're just part of the tool.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a concept. They could never come up with that idea, but they will rip people off and make millions. And creative people are always there thinking of another idea.
Sitting in a room talking about what they've done for their life. Got it. Okay. Instead of sitting on their own jet,
That's
talking
right.
about
That's
the
right.
idea that they
That's
came
right.
up with. Right.
It's a different.
I understand.
Yep.
Okay. John, which the Smite characters that I could show that's publicly available?
You could go back to the art station and actually see some of the actual concept
Okay.
art.
Where'd you like me
Maybe
to go?
if you go up to the top, I really need to update this actually, but the guy on the left there, the turtle guy.
Over there.
It's actually a running joke. Artists, they always say they're going to update their portfolio. They never do. To be fair, programmers say we're going to update our code. We never do. It's called refactoring. We even have a term for it that we never do.
This is an example of creating a new god for Smite, where we had a guy who was he's Kuzenbo, king of the Kappa. And Kappa are these Japanese legendary creatures that lurk in rivers and drown people. And very often they have a very turtle-like aspect, though sometimes they're portrayed more as like frogmen kind of things. But we decided for Smite to go with the turtle thing because his role in game was going to be what's called Guardian class, which means they're little. They soak up the damage, and the shape language associated with Guardians is width and breadth and heaviness, and
Like a tank, yeah.
so on, like a tank, yeah. And so that's why we went more with the heavy turtle, kind of almost like a sumo guy in a turtle shell. And I don't know if I put any of the development sketches up here or not. If you scroll down, they might be there. Yeah, these were like earlier versions, just kind of working to find where we wanted to go with him.
This was all digital, correct?
Yep, all in Photoshop.
So you took pictures of big naked men,
Yeah.
sumo wrestlers, and says, okay, how do I turn this guy into a turtle?
And this was a skin for another character, where we take an existing character and put sort of a new set of clothes and look to him, sometimes a little bit of new animation and so forth. And the idea here is this Norse god Uller, turn him into like a dragon hunter, where he's wearing armor based off like the leathery scales from a dragon that he's killed and so forth.
It reminds me of this old, like an electric company or Sesame Street. It's like one of these things is not the same. I'm looking at this going, okay, what is different between here and here and here? And I said, oh, I see the axe is different. And I realize, oh, this bow is different. Oh, the guy's got a beard and everything. Yeah.
And there are a bunch of sketches that go on before it even gets to this stage too. This is just kind of towards the end.
So for you to create, we'll say this, what is it, Worm Hunter? Am I saying it right?
Yep.
Okay. How long from when they say, hey, we need this, till you get to this state?
We're on a 2-week patch schedule where every patch release has new content. And that gives us about 1 to 2, maybe 2.5 weeks to develop a concept like this, total, from beginning to end. Some of them come super fast, you're right out of the gate, you've kind of nailed it. Others you need that whole 2.5 weeks. This one I don't remember. I think this one was pretty easy. Because once you have the idea in your head, oh, he's a dragon hunter, he's killed and skinned dragons. It's mostly just developing it from there.
So
Other ones where you don't have so much of an idea of what it's going to be, we need a skin for this god, and then you're just kind of groping around for something.
let's make him blue.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was an NPC in the game that we game map, Egyptian game map we did. It's a big snake that comes out of a hole and attacks you, based off some Egyptian, can't remember the name of the god right now, but it was like a snake creature from Egyptian mythology.
Oh, okay. So is it odd for you, Larry, to hear when people use the word PC and NPC? You're at the company that actually created those terms?
At least I know what the terms are. I do know what skins are, and if you think some of the terminology
Yeah,
the whole thing is weird to me. You start out from the fantasy and a few games, and I know that before I played D&D, I was actually playing some of the strategy and tactics, little hex war games and stuff. I'm like, man, this is so
Is that with
cool.
Gary?
No, this is actually when I was illustrator at Fort Knox after I got in the Army, before I went to work there. There's a guy there that was into those kind of games, and then about 3 years later, a new guy was hired, and he'd play in this brand new game called D&D. This was like 1978, and eventually I got hired by TSR. But I just go back to early gaming. I think it was a neat time where people would. It's like I heard somebody that was working with Gary Gygax back in the old days, and I was at Game Hall, which is a convention in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. That's where TSR was located. Gary Gygax's son, Luke Gygax, has a convention there, and so it's like a reunion for a lot of old TSR employees. And this old guy was sitting there talking. Well, I say old guy. He's about my age. He's an old guy, but he might have been a little bit older. But he didn't work at TSR. I'd never seen him before, but he had worked with Gary. There was a gaming group in Minnesota and Wisconsin. They'd get together, a bunch of them. And some of them, I think Vietnam was going on then too, because I got drafted in the middle of my little beginning career. And but they were playing the war games back then, those little hex things. And he was saying Gary had read, well, it's about the same. I read The Lord of the Rings, all that Hobbit back in the 60s. And it just started to hit campus, but most people didn't even know what these stories were about. And but Gary read Lord of the Rings, and he said, let's build a way to play it, to play Lord of the Rings. And he said, why can't we make it games? Like, games are always, I beat you, or you beat me. There's three of us are playing. One comes out a winner. You're always playing against each other. He said, why can't there be a game where we all work together for the same purpose? We beat whatever it is we're up against, not try to beat each other. I thought that is such a neat, and I think when that concept started and it carried on through D&D, around into computer games and everything else, it was just a neat way of looking at games and approaching them. And of course, when fantasy, like Dungeons and Dragons, it sort of opened up a mind of two or three generations that was playing at that time, and just went from there. To me, it's all fascinating. I think it's cool. Any questions from them?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Since it's 10:42, and since most people are artists, who has questions? You have a question. Except we don't have, Joey, we don't have a microphone for the audience.
You can talk loud.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. I had a question for Mr. Bridges. So how do you go about making concepts for 3D? Because you have to pass them off to like modelers and riggers.
Yeah.
How's that like different from concepts for
Well,
other things?
you can't be as rough as you might be just on your own. You do need to make sure that they can interpret that and know how to turn that into an actual 3D sculpt. So you got to be careful with how you present the details and the materials. And sometimes we'll often do material call-outs. We'll find reference for something and say, oh, this part here is going to be leather. This part here needs to be like this type of metal kind of thing. Or we just little photo call-outs to attach to the concept to kind of help them. Again, it helps when you're in a studio and you can just walk, a few yards to go talk to whoever's working on that thing. But sometimes things get outsourced to artists too, and you don't have the luxury of talking to them. And you want to make sure that they, it's all on paper for them to go. They don't have to make guesses. I've had things in the past where we've worked with overseas outsourcers who were very reluctant to do any kind of interpretation. They didn't want that responsibility. And so they would literally model, there was a squiggle in somebody's drawing for like this building they were making. They literally modeled that squiggle out as a 3D object. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, so it just depends on who you're working with. If you're working with artists you know and are there, you can often very trust them to kind of take it and run with it. But, yeah.
Would you ever take it to a turnaround or other style guides?
I have in the past with some other games. With Smite, we don't need to do that as much. We'll do pretty much a front and a back kind of thing, and the back can be a lot rougher. You know, we'll work out all the colors and materials and things on the front view.
Because you're in the same room with the modeler.
Yeah, and you're often working from an existing rig and all that. You know, so.
Now, both of you mentioned there's lots of opportunity, but that also means there's lots of competition. Can you kind of point out, and it was very different, as you were saying, back in the old days, you grabbed your portfolio, you went to New York, or you copied it over and over and sent it out and called them and that sort of stuff. But with all the extra opportunity, there's so much more competition. It's like stand in line. And there's just one right after you. What is the mindset of developing that career and keeping on the road? Or what is the mindset of becoming that business person whose art is their business? They're not just an artist who will get abused because they only want to do the art and don't bother me with the business. What's a good mindset for starting and continuing, even more important?
I think these days there's a lot more help out there online. A lot of sources for networking with other artists to find out what their experiences are. You know, guys that you don't have to go physically meet in a bar at a convention somewhere anymore. You know, you can actually, touch base with people through Facebook and these other groups. Other people are making resources devoted to helping artists out. There's a thing called Drawn and Drafted that Lauren Panapinto, who's an art director at, I think it's one of the science fiction book companies. She's put together this thing where they're creating like tools, business tools to help artists and keep on top of that type of thing. So a lot of that's out there when it wasn't. It used to be you were kind of on your own guessing and just flailing around.
Yeah. I know with me is I freelance, Well, the first thing that smacked me in the face was I didn't get health insurance through the companies anymore. That plagued me for my whole career.
Right.
Then I got in tax trouble. Had to straighten that out. It's like, all of a sudden, it's like, well, my idea wasn't to be a friggin' businessman of some type. Yeah. But then I realized if I'm going to make it in this, I have to wear all hats. Yeah. I had to learn about this. I had to do that. I had to be my own. And I don't like advertising myself. Where I was brought up, you don't brag about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at it. But you have to promote yourself.
Professional requirement.
You have to do all this stuff. And a lot of it went against my grain. And a lot of it I didn't do very well at all. Because I hated it. It made me feel icky inside. Especially self-promotion. I could have done probably a lot better. But I did not. I didn't hire anybody. I didn't do it myself. The only time I'd promote myself is I was there on the spot to look at my portfolio, or somebody would call me up about a job, and I would talk one-on-one, like, yeah, I can do it for you, or something, But I was not good at that. I should have had an agent to do that. But again, an agent, back then, you got an agent. Okay, an agent worked you to death because he got 25 to 35% of what you made, and he didn't give a crap what he was going to paint. If he did the negotiation, he'd just call you up, this is what you got to do, and it's got to be done next week. And you're like, what the hell?
Sounds like Steam and iTunes, yeah.
And there was nothing easy. But I think you had to love what you're doing so much that you were a little crazy, and you pursued it anyway,
This may be changing now, but I know for a long time schools just didn't teach us stuff. They didn't teach you how to do your
They
taxes.
didn't teach you how to draw.
You went to art school. Yeah, that's true. They didn't do that either. But they would pretend to give you this full art education, but they would totally not do the business side of it.
Zero.
Yeah. They'll teach you to draw now. They won't
Right.
teach you stuff.
Sir.
Are there now solutions to that problem? Because I'm an independent producer, and I'm here to find artists. Are there?
There's artists in the room.
Yeah. That's one. Are are there online solutions now or things like that? I mean, certainly that you guys like or respect.
Yeah, the site that I've used for my portfolio, ArtStation, a lot of guys are using that these days, but they also, artstation.com, and they
That's
also,
where artists and producers about that can all get together.
artists, art directors,
Art
3D
directors.
modelers, animators,
All this.
all get on
That's
there.
good.
And,
They didn't have that for.
But from the
Yeah.
perspective of a beginner or up and coming person, you can get drowned in that too.
Yeah.
True, yeah. Yeah, I think, really the best course is just getting to know people online who've been there and have done it. And a lot of people are willing to share that stuff, share their war stories and stuff on Facebook and Twitter and things in a way that makes it much more accessible than it used to be. Yeah.
So, with ArtStation, and if you are updating your portfolio on ArtStation, do you ever remove some pieces that are, kind of weigh your portfolio down a bit?
Yeah, if they're like really old and you just don't think it fits anymore, I've seen people do that.
But do you do it?
I have not done it for my ArtStation because I haven't been
You've
using
been
it
too
for that
busy,
long.
right?
Yeah. What I wish actually is one of the other things in this business is if you work on certain projects that are under NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, you're not allowed to show that stuff until you have permission. And you could spend years working on a project like I did and still not have anything to publicly show for it because you don't have permission.
It works in the
And then
program
by the
filter.
time you eventually do get that permission, it'll be like so old you don't want to show anybody. So.
Good. She's been at one nice
When it
question.
comes to online social media promotion, I know that maintaining an online presence is important. So, how important would you say is it to kind of keep a balance of maintaining that, but not letting it get in the way of your work? Because sometimes it feels a bit overwhelming to maintain that at the same time while creating content, just
Right.
by trying to keep updates with your work and everything, like with just showing people that you're constantly updating and interacting with other people. So how would you say that you maintain that balance?
I think different people do it different ways. It's one of those things you just have to find what works for you. I know people who, when they go into particularly big projects, will essentially say, hey, I'm signing off for a while, see you guys in a couple months, and pretty much just stay off of social media and then come back when they're done and have the time to devote to it. And then other people have a way of just keep on keeping on. They're pretty active and it doesn't seem to interfere with their flow. So I think it just depends on finding what balance works for you. I find if I'm too busy with something, I don't post much stuff. But if I get to a lull or whatever, I'll get a little more active and I'll start to gather stuff that I've done over the last couple months and say, oh hey, I can post this now, which I'm probably going to start doing in a couple weeks actually.
Do you think that you do it really well now, or do you still feel like you've got a deficit,
still-
like you're really missing
Yeah.
opportunities or something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever feel like you totally won. It's a constant process.
I used to work for a company called MySpace, and I have never been able to understand the concept of social media. I don't understand sharing everything that I have, what I'm doing, online. And then people say, well, James, you've been active. I said, I'm coming out with 7 games this year. And they're like, what are you talking about? But, I don't need to broadcast that to the world. So, with social media, I try to be very conservative on what I say, and I'm afraid to say anything that people are going to jump. It's like, people are just waiting for you to say that one thing that just, oh, you blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to get in this fight. I have other things to do. But answer to your question, I do the social networking for Larry, so he'll be painting something and he'll take a picture, he either send it to me or he'll post it and I'll share it to all the other different message boards. But it's not something I want to do. But I do it because I love this guy. So.
Well, once you get to a certain level, it's like you have a brand you're effectively managing,
Well, you're still always updating your brand.
Yeah. And that becomes a part of it. You look at it that way, I don't think I'm quite at that level, but, someone like a Neil Gaiman, for example, who, he's got his brand and his Twitters and Facebook posts are all a part of that, and I'm sure he understands that, and it's all part of maintaining that
And
Neil Gaiman-ness that people expect from him.
one of the drawbacks, in a way, not drawbacks, but a reality, is your own personality reflects how you're going to handle your business, your world. I know Jeff Easley was an artist, same time when I was there at TSR. I was getting work on the side all the time. I was working 8 hours at TSR and 8 hours at home. I was making money at the wazoo at that time. Like to kill me. I paid for it later, but I'd go around Chicago, and there's a lot of places you could work from. So I'd make a presentation to somebody with my portfolio. Chip was so shy and so quiet. I'd put my over and get his portfolio, make a presentation with his, and sometimes he'd get a job and I wouldn't, you know. But that hurt him severely in his whole life, his art life, because he could not go out and get the stuff. He did not like coming up to. He was a very shy type person. But once you got to know him, he wasn't. But it took a long time. But your own person, there's times, like I said, I hated self-promotion. It was like, I grew up, like I said, in a country, small town back then. You didn't go around bragging about yourself, but you're going to prove what you can say, buddy. You might get in a big fight, you know. But so if you went around bragging, you better be able to back it up. And so bragging was something you didn't do unless you were looking for a fight. And so when I looked at self-promotion, it's always like bragging, like, look what I can do. I can do it better than anybody, you know, Harvey. And that
circles at 3.
bothered me, and it was rough, but I had to overcome that. And you'll find there's flaws in your own personality. One thing, I hate paperwork. I hate it. I wouldn't go to some huge cons because I didn't want to fill the paperwork out to go. It was too much trouble, and it was stupid, and I don't know. I actually hired a girl one time when I started going to San Diego Comic-Con. I gave her a friggin' painting and some other stuff, just do the paperwork. And it's probably done in 30 minutes, but I hate it, you know. And I'd rather be drawing or something, you know. But your personality is going to interfere sometimes with what you're trying to do. You got to overcome those parts. Look at your weak places and look at your plus, the good things. If I can go and meet somebody and talk, I was doing pretty good. I could handle it. But boy, if I had any other junk, I didn't want to fool with it. I didn't feel right. But yeah, it's really, you're trying to start a business and run it. And unless you get hired by a big company, then you're there for a while, or you don't know how long, right? And things change. But yeah, you are your own little corporation, and a corporation, and sometimes you're all alone, sometimes you're floating with somebody else for a while. But yeah, there's nothing easy about being an artist or a creative person.
So I haven't been on Facebook for a very long time, actually.
Good for you.
That's all right.
I
I'm sorry.
haven't activated my account in like 2 or 3 years. I mean, am I missing anything? Can I still go on Twitter?
There's still pictures of cats. People
Yeah.
don't take pictures of food. People are always doing selfies.
Yeah.
So,
Imager has
yeah, they
all
take
that.
pictures of themselves and post it online. I'm
But
like,
yeah, it-
okay.
You could be missing some opportunities to network directly with some other artists. There are groups on Facebook where guys will get together and discuss exactly business issues and things like that. But, you know, you could probably find that elsewhere too, maybe through Twitter or Instagram. A lot of people connect through Instagram these days.
For me, networking has been the key. And I always tell my students, look, the school's not going to get you a job. You're not going to just sit there and randomly send in resumes to different companies. You need to get out and start meeting people and talking to people. You need to go face to face. First off, it opens up your personality skills. Like, I don't like talking to people. It's something I've always done. So what did I do? I became a teacher. So, I mean, I forced to talk to students. And through that, I have met a lot of people. I've been coming to SIEGE since its conception with Andrew. For, 11 years now is what we're celebrating?
Like that, yeah.
Good Lord. So, and every Tuesday, at least for those who are here in the Atlanta area, every Tuesday there's a meetup of something, whether it's a GGDA meetup, an IGDA meetup, whether it's a Unity, GGDA, IGDA, Unity, Art, on Tuesday of every week, there's some kind of meetup happening in Atlanta. All over Atlanta, Kennesaw, Marietta, Lawrenceville, Duluth, a lot of times downtown. SCAD usually puts on a bunch of things. Artists of Atlanta, sometimes. AIU used to put on things too. So it was all these different companies. Kennesaw State University is always hosting game jams. These are places where you actually go and meet people with your face.
Yeah.
instead of a book of people's faces.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to start getting into a company.
But you don't have to have a Facebook to kind of.
I don't think so.
I would probably, what John said, put a thing on ArtStation.
Yeah.
Just,
ArtStation.
that's your portfolio.
Yeah.
And that's what
Have
you can share to people.
ArtStation, Instagram,
Yeah.
Twitter.
Yeah, I would concentrate more on what's going to really affect you or, going to help you out personally. With me, I mean, I got a Facebook thing, and in like a few months, they said I couldn't have any more friends, and I'm like, well, I got pissed, and I found out I had 5,000. That's your limit.
In 1 month, it went to 5,000.
And so like, holy cow. So then somebody back then started me a fan page. But I go on Facebook, I was doing it, but once, maybe a week, and just try to respond a little bit. I could live on friggin' Facebook and get nothing done. And between
That's
that
major.
and everything else in your life, I don't do a lot of this. I draw and paint. It's time consuming. I do it the old fashioned way. It takes time. I love it. And my wife retired, so now she's home all the time. And I think she thought all those years when she was working, I was home painting, that I was probably just running around a hot rod and just acting stupid and random. Yeah. And the other day she said, she's been retired now for 2 years. She said, "You're obsessed." I said, "With what?" I don't know what she's talking about. She said, "With art." I said, oh well, yeah. Yeah. And she said, "Well, you would paint." And now she sees by the time I get up till midnight, and used to it was 3 or 4 in the morning, I would paint and draw. She said, "That's all you do?" I said, "Yep. If you leave me alone, that's all I'll ever do." That's what I do. And it's crazy. And so I really don't have time for much other stuff. And but at your age, and you've got to get in there, you got to make time for it. You got to promote, and it's a great time for artists, but it's a bad time. Anytime there's more jobs, there's a whole lot more people trying to get it. Back when it was hard to be an illustrator, not a lot of people was going after it because you're stupid to try to be an illustrator. You waste your time and your life, But now there's more opportunities, so there's more people, more competition, and God, there's a lot of competition, good competition.
Well, it's 11 o'clock, so we're going to have to go ahead and wrap this up. But at the same time, Tom's going to explain something.
Oh,
Aren't you,
I was
Tom?
just going to say, Andrew
Stand
showed
up.
us the room. Well, it's been a few.
Oh, okay.
Andrew
Don't
showed us
listen.
the room, and in the Marietta room, like way down the hall and take a left, is where the drawing workshop.
Uh-huh.
And he said it could be up to you as long as you need to set up between now and then or take a rest. It's open for us. So you're going to have to decide a time for that. Say it's
So essentially, Larry's going to draw. He's going to show you some of the things that he has drawn.
so it's 11 now. You could safely just say 12 to 1 and give yourself an hour to set up. It's up to you.
Okay.
It hasn't been organized.
Well, is it
So
Are you hungry?
several people drawing, or just me?
Probably. John, do you want to draw?
I can't stick around that long today.
No.
So-
Tom, you going to draw?
Yeah, I'll draw.
Okay, so I got
Just
2.
keep
Craig,
going.
you going to draw?
Sure.
Okay, I got 3 people. Going once? Going 17? Banana. Okay.
So an hour from now,
Okay.
You want to kill time for an hour?
because there's nothing set up in there except for chairs and a desk and some seats.
Okay, well, what I
I got
have,
my drawing stuff, and that's
You're
all.
happy.
So I might go smoke a cigar and have some coffee and
okay, for those who want to
20,
see,
30 minutes and going over.
I actually brought one of Larry's original oil paintings as one of his original drawings. It's in the trunk of my car. I'm not going to tell you where my car is, but I'm going to go get it and go take it to the booth. We have a little booth set up for Larry in the booth room. I don't know what the name of the exhibition hall.
The hall.
It has a name. Yeah, okay. Exhibition hall. Hi. So we're going to go set it up in the exhibition hall, I guess, now. So, and then
So
you
we
guys
got
can
an hour
come.
for setup, and at 12 o'clock in Marietta, we'll have either a continuation of this and some drawing workshop centering around.
Well, thank you very much for coming. Hope you guys enjoyed and learned something.